Hey everyone, I'm Trent Kusters, co-founder and studio director at League of Geeks, and this is the Game Maker's Notebook. Today, it's my first step for 2023, and I had the distinct pleasure of talking to Scott Chen. Scott is the co-founder of Sigono, a developer based in Taiwan, who are probably most well known for their series of games, the Opus series. Opus Echoes of Starsong was their latest one. It's available on Game Pass now. It's also available on Steam, has 97% positive on Steam. I mean, these games are good. They just announced their next one. It's called Opus Prism Peak. You can wishlist that on Steam as well. But we actually talk about how Scott, of course, got into the industry, how he met his co-founder at Carnegie Mellon, Brian Lee, how they came about founding Sigono. And then there's a really strong theme throughout the entire podcast. There's kind of two running there. One is about how incredibly adept Sigono have been at scaling these games in a very sensible manner. So like I said, there's been 3 games released, the 4th one's on its way, and you can really see, even from their earlier iOS titles, how they very intelligently just dial those levers on scope and ambition. I mean, they're a small team, they're only about 20 now, and they were even smaller when they started off. And it's just super impressive to hear him talk about their very targeted decisions around scope and, you know, how that goes right into the core of the games that they're making. And then the other theme is, you know, making games in Taiwan and making games in the East, whether it be for the West, even growing up in that. It's a fascinating podcast, and Scott is a lovely, lovely dude. I had a wonderful time chatting with him. I hope you enjoy too.
あれからどのぐらい経ったのだろうか。66年前、エイダと出会った年のこと。
ここは多分龍脈の中心だからきっと聞こえるはず。
我が指は龍脈を指し、我が手は天地をかける音を紡がう。僕が守るから。
私が守ってるの。
エイダの話だから見てみたい。
おしゃべり荷物め。
もういい。
あなたとなんて出会わなければよかった。
龍脈を探すのはあんたらのお箱じゃなかった。
龍脈は諦めなさい。お前に何ができる？龍脈で屍になるだけだ。
絶対に見つかるもん。
龍脈は常に活路あり。奏でましょう。龍脈を追い続ければいつか彼女にたどり着ける。私はそう信じている。
必ず故郷に来てもらうわ。私が大好きなところ。
Thanks for joining us today, Scott. It's so great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
No problem. Now, I'm actually I feel quite spoiled because usually when I do this podcast, I'm like, it's in some like early bird hour or late in the evening or something. But you're not far from my time zone here in Melbourne. You were in Taiwan, am I correct?
Taiwan. Yep.
Yeah. Whereabouts in Taiwan? Are you in Taipei?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. And I'm just launching straight into it. The whole team, are you all there?
Actually it's 8 right now, so everybody's still sleeping, but our company's
not there right now.
Yeah, exactly. Our studio starts late, so I'm the early bird right now.
Yeah, you're on island time.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for joining us at Early Bird. Look, as you probably know, we like to start these things off with, you know, how games started for you personally and how you ended up getting into the industry, how Sigono kicked off. And I think once we get to Sigono, then we'll start going through the Opus series and your games and everything. But what was your earliest memory of games? I know they're big in Taiwan, obviously. What do you remember? What was that spark of inspiration for you with games?
I started playing games like during, I guess, starting from my like lower school, like I think first grade or something, but I'm sure like the games that I mentioned, nobody heard of in the States. So because we've been playing like a lot of local Taiwanese games, like there's a kind of like a Monopoly knockoff called Rich Man, which was
all right. Are you talking about board games or video? Is that like a digital board game? Yeah, right. Video games. It's called Rich Man. Awesome. Straight to the point. I love it.
Yep. And there's a couple like really famous RPG. I think it's called Sword and Fairy in English, but that's that. And then like in lower school, like when I found out that what I really wanted to do was during lower school when I got my Nintendo 64 at that time. And then like there's not a lot of people playing video games in Taiwan at that age of time, to be honest.
Oh, really? And so when you when you say lower school, for those folks who aren't familiar with sort of the Taiwanese education system, what ages is lower school?
It's basically starting from like so it's like 6 to 12, basically.
Yeah, cool. So you're in lower school, you get a 64 and something sparks in your brain. But you're saying, when you say other people aren't playing, much games, do you mean just like the kids at school aren't playing games?
Yeah, kids at school, they just study, and people are used like because I don't know, in Taiwan there's not a lot of like import of like video games. So at that time it was like Super Nintendo and N64 and PlayStation. Yep. Like we don't have like the means and ways to acquire those console games, so it was like extremely expensive. I only got my N64 because I got first place in one of the semesters. I got first.
Oh, really?
I got first place in the classroom. So that's why I got my N64.
Was this wasn't a prize from the school? Was this like a deal your parents had made with you or something?
Exactly.
I love it. Do you think that you would have gotten first place if that prize wasn't on the table? Was that your motivation that semester?
Yeah, exactly. Right after I got the system, like my grade just went down. I didn't care about school anymore, but
yeah, they had no idea what they had done. They'd unleashed the beast. But I mean, hey, exactly. it's worked out well. So you get your N64 and you start playing games. You said, did you know from a young age that that's what you wanted to do, or did that come about sort of as you got a bit older?
I mean, like, I think that's like I was pretty set on being like a person making games, creating games of some sort.
Yeah, at that age you don't really know what it is, what people are doing, right? It's just like one of those people that make the games. Yeah, that sounds
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really funny, like because like during the like in the Taiwanese education system, there's nothing's like remotely sound like video game creation. Like there's no curriculum surrounding around it. So I have no idea like if I want to be a video game creator, what major should I be in? So during when I was applying for university, I thought like, okay, making games is using a computer, creating something of some sorts. Mm-hmm. So I applied for graphic design because on this description of graphic design, it says using computer to create art and design. So I was like, oh, okay,
that sounds remote. That's the one.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, that sounds remotely like that sounds kind of like making video games. So I just went in and found out it was like a completely different world. So I graduated with a graphic design degree, but But
And was this
I don't.
was this in Taiwan that you were
No,
doing
actually,
this?
I study university and I study college in America in
Right. Is
Rhode
this
Island School of Design.
Oh, cool. Okay. But your co-founder, Brian Lee, you two met at Carnegie Mellon, is that right?
Yeah. So we met during grad school. So we were in Carnegie Mellon Entertainment Technology Center. That's like their special department that create like entertainment experiences. So it's like,
So you found it in the end. Finally, you found the place to be to make video games.
Exactly. It's a quick switch of course. After I graduated, I was like, nah, I'm not going to do graphic design. I still want to make games. So
Awesome. And so how was that? So you're living in the States. You're at Carnegie Mellon. You finally found this video games course, or that's a course that's enabling you to do that stuff. Obviously Carnegie Mellon's rep exceeds itself in regards to the video game grads that they're pumping out and the work that they're doing. How did you find it? Was it finally like, yes, this is where I wanted to be, or was it kind of a rude awakening? What it was like punching in the ones and zeros to make your video game?
It was definitely something. Like I wasn't really expected to like making games to be like this. It's kind of like, oh, you're gonna do planning. You're gonna design the game like with spreadsheets and stuff.
Yeah, the classic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's always the thing. Whenever you want to horrify a 14-year-old about what game design is or whatever, you just like show them the spreadsheet that you spend every day. And like, this is game design, my friend.
Yeah, exactly. Like until now, I'm still having a hard time explaining to my parents what it is. It's like my parents always ask me, like, "What do you actually do?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know, shifting some numbers," and so it sounds like I'm doing econ or something. But yeah.
So are they happy with their decision to give you a Nintendo 64? Or do they regret it?
I don't think there's any regret from them. Maybe. I think they kind of prefer me to go like medical school or something, but I think they're pretty happy about my decision in the end.
Yeah, that's it. I think you're doing okay for yourselves, I'm sure. Yeah. So tell us about. So you're at Carnegie Mellon. You meet Brian. How does that come about? How do you two meet each other? Is it just sort of first day of class, or is it like you get paired up by the teacher, or how do you because you've gone on to found this company. In I think it was 2013. Am I getting it right? Sigono came together. Yep. 2013 with Brian. It was just the two of you at that point, was it?
Yeah, we just met in Carnegie Mellon. Basically first day of school, and then we're like, oh, okay, you're from Taiwan too, and you kind of like indie games. So we kind of know each other from the beginning, but we didn't really work together until like the second semester in. Mm-hmm. So we were on a team. So the second semester, meaning like the second year of grad school. So we were doing like our final thesis, and we've been talking about making games a long time ago. So like our final thesis, we decided to team together and created a game called The Last Signal, which utilizes at that time the Microsoft Kinect.
Yes, great little experience, the Kinect.
Oh yeah, so like the Entertainment Technology Center is like really big on doing motion controls and stuff. Mm-hmm. So before it was the head-mounted display, the HMD, and then they like the Microsoft Kinect is basically the new thing that they were like really pushing us to do. So yeah, we made a game called The Last Signal. It was basically like it's really hard to explain. So you're basically the only survivor in an apocalyptic world, and you're sending a last help signal out of your little radio station. So the player kind of controls a wavelength, a sound wavelength, using their motions. So like they're using their right hand, they control the amplitude, and the left hand, they control the frequency. And they're kind of do like little platforming things. So there will be obstacles like hitting the signal. So you kind of need to like adjust it to to dodge the obstacles. So it was after we so how the graduation thesis worked is basically we hosted like a whole show that we showed to like people from the game industry and entertainment industry. So we got a call from a person from the big company that we could not really tell, but they basically acquired the whole rights of develop the IP further. So we got a pretty big sum of money at that time, and we were like, okay, what we're going to do about the money, and then we kind of came to a conclusion of like starting Sigono from there.
Awesome. And so did you kind of just start Sigono, the two of you, because you kind of like had this money and you're like, well, let's start a games company and see what we can do? Or had you two been talking about, because, you know, the Opus series it seems so brilliantly conceived, you know, like there's the universe, how these standalone stories from each game, you know, that it's so, God, it just feels like something that was, you know, the two of you were maybe talking about over lunch or something for years and years, and then you finally had a shot at building this company. Was it like that? Did you have ideas of things that you wanted to do together, or even just types of games? Or was it kind of just like, oh, okay, I guess we got this money. What do we do with it? I like working with you. You like working with me. Let's make some more games, I guess, and figure out what they are.
Well, before we started the company, we've been making games on our own and also together as a side project. So we created a couple of like arcade games. So it's like kind of fast paced and you have one life. So it's kind of like a time attack kind of thing, or survivor kind of thing. So we've been creating those like as a side project. So we had a couple games. One is called Castle Rider and another one called Hyper Square. And so we created these experience it's for iPhone. And we created these experience and we actually don't know how to launch it and don't have like a reason to launch it. So it's like, okay, since we're going to find this company, and might as well just finish these games after we graduate and then put it on App Store.
That's so awesome. Like it's such a good dry run for a company as well. It's like, you know, we often talk about how the best way to get better at making games is to just ship more and more games, right? The more, it doesn't matter the size of them, but, you know, go through that pitch to ship cycle. So what a great test run for starting a company. You got 2 games ready to go to just close out, put them on the App Store, see how they do. So that would have been within the first, how long did it take you to get those 2 games out on the App Store?
So I think after we graduated, we spent another year. So it was really funny. Like during grad school, Brian actually made another game called Power Tapper. And then,
all right, cool.
And then he decided to just launch right into onto App Store without any like marketing or anything. So I still remember like he was really excited and he launched the game. He pressed the publish button on App Store. And then, like the next day, it just vanished.
Nobody just fell to the bottom of the pile, into the abyss. Oh man, he's not the only one who's done that. At least there's some solace in that.
So like for Castle Rider Hypersphere, we made sure like at least do some research. We kind of like talk to some press, some media, and kind of go on to some forums to make sure like at least people know about the game. Yeah,
bit of visibility and awareness.
Yeah, and then we were really lucky. Like for Hyper Square, we actually got contacted by Apple, and they kind of say like, hey, they want to feature us on their main page. So like being featured at that time is really big because
What year are we talking now, Scott? Like, what's this, like 2014 or something?
Yeah, it's like 2014 or 2015. Yeah. So it was quite early it's like still at the early cycle of App Store. So and like once you get featured, you're like on there.
Yeah. Was this like, had you released them for like $1 or were they free to play, or what was your sort of your price point?
I'm trying to think. I think it was still...
It was paid or?
Yeah, I think it was paid. Yeah.
It was kind of like the last that around those years, like, you know, the sort of coming up to the mid 2000s was always, it felt like the last hurrah of premium on Apple before the bottom just completely fell out of it. And so that featuring helped a bit. You guys got some revenue from the game from the featuring.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that time being featured is like good news. God said. Exactly.
Yeah, Apple anointed you with the blessed feature. Open the money pipe.
Exactly.
Great. So that's 2 games. Now, when you say that you focused a bit on the marketing and stuff, do you think it was the feature obviously that did the heavy lifting, but was there anything that you had started to do with that in those early stages with those games that, you know, set you up for the kind of success and the great marketing that you do with, you know, the Opus series and things like that? Were there some big lessons that you learned putting those things out?
Mm-hmm. I think the big lessons which lead us to the Opus series is like, we're of course, like after Hyperscale was out, we were like thinking, okay, what should we do next? Or should we like make another Hyperscale since it was pretty famous already? It was pretty. Yeah, it was pretty famous already. So we're like, okay, what should we do? And then we kind of like look on the internet if people are still talking about game, because like after launch, it was like half a year. We took like a couple months to half a year off, and we just went back to the forum seeing how people are reacting to the game. So like during like the App Store cycle, it's basically like you launch the game, and then after a month or so, it depends on the game being like went viral or not. If it doesn't, it kind of like drops down. So we kind of see like a harsh drop, and then nobody is continuing discussing about the game, and we're like, okay, why is that? And then we kind of have different conclusions, but in the end, we kind of feel like if you want to make a game that people will talk about, and then for years, it's going to be something that they can really relate to. And if we're talking about these kind of games, there must be a story in it. So we kind of like went on like, okay, how about creating like a story-driven experience for the players on mobile platform. And then we started doing research on that, and we're like, okay, on mobile devices, there's not a lot of people focusing on narrative-driven games. I think at that time, it was like the biggest game was the Telltale games. What was that? Walking Dead.
Like huge,
Yeah, so it was really big at that time. But other than Walking Dead, there's not a lot of other like story-driven experience. And Walking Dead is like kind of like almost, it's like a triple I to like, it was like a big production game.
Yeah, especially for narrative games at the time, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really like an indie spirited like narrative game during that time.
Now, Scott, where are you situated in the world? Have you and Brian come home at this point? Or are you still in the States, or?
It was really funny. Like after we graduated, we decided like, okay, where should we go? So because we're starting our company, so we're like, okay, so maybe we want to meet some VCs and that can kickstart a company. So most of the VCs lives in California, so might as well just move to California. So we lived in California for a couple years, basically. Yeah. So and then like we quickly found out that, okay, most of the VCs just want to meet online. They're like, okay, let's do video chat. So it doesn't really matter where we live. Right. Yeah, exactly. It was like really crazy expensive in California.
Yeah.
So in the end, like I think after on our like 3rd year, we moved back to Taiwan.
Yeah, cool. Right. And so what year would that have been? That like 2017 or something like that?
Yeah. It's around 2017, I think.
Cool. Right. And how old are the two of you at that point in time? Like you just graduated, you got your own company, you're, you know, moving states, chasing VCs, shipping games.
I don't know, like 30, I think.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think back. But yeah, around 30.
So, all right. So it was. So did you start tackling? Because you shift quite a few things, right? Like, did you start tackling Opus directly after Hypersquare? Was that your answer, or was there something in between that was like the stepping stone to that narrative experience?
I think it was just after putting Hypersquare out, we have this revelation of, okay, we kind of want to make an experience that they'll remember for life.
Yeah.
And what kind of experience are these? Like, mostly, so what we're familiar of is Final Fantasy, because it's a Japanese game. We mostly, in Taiwan, like Taiwanese people mostly play Japanese games. Right. So people will remember Final Fantasy like after they grow up. So we kind of want to make some kind of experience kind of like that. So so that's why Opus kind of came out, like kind of formed. So we want to make so the first step was like, okay, we want to make a narrative game. And what kind of narrative game? And we kind of like juggling different keywords that we find interested. So in the end, we end up with exploring in a vast area. So we want to make something that about exploration, and while you explore, the story will progress. So immediately, like, space came into mind, because space is like a vast place that you can explore, and also the ocean, like undersea, it's also a vast place which you can explore. So we kind of like debating, okay, which route should we go? And then I think, and also at that time, we felt that space is more being talked about, because I think around that time Interstellar was out. So it was quite popular. Like, space-themed stuff are quite popular. So we decided to make something about space. So that's how the first game, The Day We Found Earth, came out. Came together. Came together.
Now, had any of you had any writing or narrative experience before?
I don't. Brian was the person who do most of the writings. I don't. Yeah. I think he kind of like drops down like little stories every now and then, but
like just like a keen hobbyist sort of writer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
and because he never really create like a 4-hour experience.
Until now. Because it is quite amazing. Like, you say it so casually, Scott, but you're like, we wanted to, make a game like Final Fantasy, which is one of like the most well-known IPs in the video gaming world, or, probably one of the most well-known entertainment IPs in the world, full stop. How did you, it's one thing to just say that, but then it's one thing to actually, because I bet you there are tons and tons and tons of developers like yourself, right, that grew up with Final Fantasy and then go, I want to make a game that has this everlasting impact on people like that. And they go about trying to do that, and they just completely fail in the execution, or even maybe fail from step one in understanding what Final Fantasy is or the allure of it. So what kind of was there any kind of process that you went through to try and pick apart why Final Fantasy was, especially it being your first narrative game, like what the things that you actually needed in the narrative for Final Fantasy to have some kind of impact on you, whether it be, some kind of like, maybe there's a theme of loss in everyone, or it's a technological, fantastical environment, or how did you go about it? Or did you just kind of feel gut instinct your way through it, and Brian just typed up some stories based off memories of playing the game?
I think what we started, like how we started, because we're only a team at that time. We're only a team of 3, and then it quickly became 4. But like with 4 people, we kind of we were pretty careful about it. Like, we scaled down way scaled down, like the whole scope of the game. So we're stripping down like Final Fantasy, what's like the core element. So of course the RPG side, and of course the character building side of things. And we at that time we really want to focus on character building. So we want to create a character that people can relate to and then can have a lasting impact with them. So, and then we just throw away the whole
everything
RPG
else.
Yeah, basically. We basically did that.
Yeah.
So like our core idea is to create a story about a character growing up. And we kind of based our code mechanic around it. So
yeah, so maybe explain this might actually be a good point right now, Scott, to just explain to some of our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with the Opus series,
okay.
what the Opus series is, and then especially like let's just maybe give us the elevator pitch for The Day We Found Earth.
Okay, so The Day We Found Earth is about a robot, Emeth. He wakes up one day and finds that he's alone in his spaceship. And he doesn't really know what to do, but he has one goal in his mind, which is to find Earth, because in our setting, like Earth, it became like a myth of some sort, and their mission is to find Earth in this vast space. So he'll be using his telescope and stare at the sky, and then find any star, and to find any planet that's remotely similar to Earth. So while the player looks for Earth, the story will progress as well. And then later he'll find out what happened to the crew. And then since his master is, well, spoiler alert, but his master is gone. And so he doesn't really have a purpose in life anymore. So he kind of like during the experience, he kind of regained his like goal basically. And then he grew a little bit.
Yeah, you have that full character arc in there.
Yep.
And so the Opus series, all of the Opus series are like narrative experiences, as people may, just again, for our listeners who may not have seen it or whatever, absolutely go, check out the trailers. Also, check out the reviews on Steam. I think that your latest one, Echoes of Starsong, is like 97% positive on Steam. It's got a 91 Metacritic. It's absolutely incredible critical reception.
We're really proud of it.
You should be. It's probably in like the top 1,000 games or something on Steam. It's absolutely bonkers. That accomplishment is just incredible. And it's deserving. The game's really special. But it definitely is in that the game... It's a narrative adventure game of some sort, right? Where all of the Opus series, and I actually really like with the 3 Opus series. So all of the Opus series, and correct me anywhere I'm wrong here, Scott, right?
Go for it.
The 3 Opus series are set in the same universe, the Opus universe, but they're thousands of years apart, right? So they're standalone narratives. And I actually like, as well, talking about scope and scope management, it's really impressive, even just how you as a studio, yourself and Brian and the rest of you, like, how you've actually, like, the first one is kind of like exploration, and then the next one has another mechanic, and then the second one is kind of like all of those mechanics together. And so the scope is expanding with each game, and it feels quite seamless. It feels like there's so much more depth and so much more dynamism to the experience, because the way in which the narrative presented and the way in which you keep us busy, even though they're very simple interactions a lot of the time, it's quite a deep experience, and it's quite engaging for, and again, for quite a very ambitious scope in regards to story and presentation and all of that. Like, I wouldn't say it's, as simple in that sense, but yeah, it's really, really quite a, what's the word? Quite a graceful experience in many ways, how it all comes together. Very, very tight and polished package. So let's go back to making The Day We Found Earth. So you start out, how long was that development? How was it? Because it's a bigger title, right? I think you said it was like a 4-hour long narrative experience. Was it initially just for the for mobile, or were you targeting premium platforms? Okay, so just for mobile. How did it go? Talk us through the development of your first bigger game and your first narrative experience, etc.
Oh wow! So, like we were definitely like experimenting on like the whole development process. So we actually started with the keywords which I've mentioned, like exploration and also the vast space. So like starting from there, we actually found a couple musics that that kind of like speaks to those words. And then with the music, we start building around like finding the right characters, and also the right story of it. So I think one thing that's really interesting that we think we did right was to pick like an AI character, like a robot, because we don't have like a big art team or something. I think talking a story, there must be like a character, like a human.
Yeah, that's why I was going to say it's
like
interesting that you
emotions.
say that it was a good decision, because a lot of the time, you know, narratives can fall over when they're like, our protagonist is a robot, because we don't relate to a robot. You know, there's obviously there's a few like Wall-E and others where people have been able to pull it off. But it worked out for you for other, you were still able to achieve that, obviously, that empathy, but it worked out for you for production reasons and everything as well.
Yeah, because like the reason we chose a robot is because the movement is more predictable. So for human, like when they talk, when they express their feelings, you need to look at their face. You need to they have hand motions and everything like that. So there's a lot more work to be invested in like a real character, but. For a robot, like the motions, because they have joints, so the motions are like all set, and also their emotions can be like stripped down, because robots can be really simple. They can just do one thing.
Far more archetypal, right?
Exactly. So like in the beginning of the story, the robot is really just a robot. Like his goal is just to find Earth, and he doesn't care anything else. So it's easier to let the robot grow, because when he's focusing on one thing, but he learned another thing, that's like two times of like goal and emotion for the robot. So like the sense of growth is much bigger compared to like something complex like a human being. And the robot, I mean, we made it really cute, and then it has like a really childlike nature. Yeah, we made it has a really childlike nature, because robots they basically are like newborns. They kind of like learn around the world, learn about emotion. So it's basically like people looking at this robot figure and look him grow from like a little baby to like an adult. Like he has this revelation and he learns to move on. So I think it was this sentimental feeling that like people really relate to with Emeth the robot. So yeah, I think that's how I think the character is that successful.
Yeah. And so when did you release it? It was in
Wow.
Yeah. Do you remember? Okay. Well, let's start. Try an easier question, maybe. How long did it take you to make this big game of yours?
It took around like a year or so.
Okay. Like cool.
Around a year.
That's still fast. You know, for like a 4-hour, premium mobile experience. That's a great.
So
first shot
at 2015.
2015. Okay, but all right. So now let's talk about the how it landed. Like closing it out, getting it out there. Did Brian have a repeat of his, put it out there and it vanished into the bottom of the App Store, or did you got the blessing of the Apple gods and you got a feature, or how did it all go? Because it's actually on Steam and other platforms now as well, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we started out from App Store because that's where we're most familiar of. We also have contacts from Apple, so we basically like talk with them, and then I think the launch was pretty smooth, and cool. Like we also got featured on couple countries, so awesome. we were pretty happy about it, and then but the respawn is completely different from Hypersquare, like the players, the responses from the players. So I think that one thing that really that really struck us is like we've been receiving like letters and emails about people talking about the game and thanking us. There's one instance where like a mother of like I think a 10-year-old child, 8-year-old child,
Yeah.
like the mother of him sent an email to us saying that like his son is like one of the biggest fan of our games. And because of this game, he's really interested in astronomy now, and he wants to learn about that field. And like
Isn't that amazing?
like she really she was really thankful about it. So and that really struck
she was like,
us,
my child was destined for prison. Like he was a write-off until your game came along. Now he's going to be an astronomer. Thank you so much. Yeah. It's a really, really powerful medium, isn't it? Like we can work in our studios, in our spreadsheets, and we can put out these games and, be so concerned about when we're running companies about the success of them or what people think in regards to what's it going to Metacritic, what are this? Oh, we just got a couple of negative Steam reviews. And then you get that one letter or that one person comes up to you at, Bit Summit or like PAX West or something and some other part of the world, and they tell you some incredible story about how this piece of entertainment that this piece of art that we've created, that you created here, how it's potentially changed the course of some kid's life. This kid might be, finding stars out there, and who knows, they might actually find the next habitable Earth for us, similar planet for us to go. They might find Plan B. No, it's incredible. It's a special feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention the boy had depression before, and then like the mother was saying that it helped him walk out of depression, which we never thought of like games can like change lives. So
the first thing that you see when you go to reviews to this game is people talking about, like, especially when I was, I played a bit of Echoes of Starsong, and, looking at the reviews, people just talking about how it's the first game that ever made them cry, or, it's like moved them to tears. Like one person was like, I cried the entire time. I was like, whoa, okay, yeah.
I don't know what started it, but like we became like a company who makes people cry, basically.
Not your employees, just the people who play your games. Yeah,
exactly. Basically,
Amazing. Okay, so you've done it. The game is obviously out on iOS. It's apparent, obviously, that you then start porting it, I assume, to other platforms. When do you kick off the next game? Because that's really like the next game is really when some of the wild, like, critical success, occurs.
I think we started right after we launched The Day We Found Earth, and
right, okay,
like I think that one I think Rocket Whispers took a bit longer, like almost 2 years, like 1.5 to 2 years of development. So at that time, we were growing our team to like 6 to even 8 people.
Oh, okay.
And then because for The Day We Found Her, it was pretty like on rails. Like it was like a really simple game actually. So you have one objective to find. So like each part of the game, you have one goal. You have like a little like mission board saying that you have to find this planet at what coordination. So you go there, find the planet, and then the story will move on. So it's just basically that. Like the whole cycle of the game is basically like that. So for Rocket Whispers, we're thinking of, okay, now we really want to make something like like people actually explore the world a little bit more. So we kind of created this like deserted planet where people actually have the freedom to walk around on their own and try to learn about this environment, learn about the space. So that's kind of like the next evolution of the Opus series, which is we kind of focus on explorations a little bit more, and we put a little bit of survival aspect inside.
And so another, like, I guess you start tackling humans at that point as well, right? In Rocket of Whispers?
Yes.
Yeah.
But we only tackled two people. There are only
You
two
didn't go crazy.
survivors.
Yeah.
We kind of want to do humans, but not too much. Maybe just two. So.
I think you might actually be the only sensible game developer on the planet. I don't know how many. Every other game developer would be like, "Let's go, full crew, right off the bat." It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I think like the decisions. I think Brian is like the main person who did the decision making, but
yeah,
I mean, like we were really like really strict on scoping the game, controlling the scope of the game. So
yeah,
I think two characters is like we have our hands full on that.
And so, how long did that take you? Rocket of Whispers. I think you just mentioned before, right?
Yeah, it was around almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. Wow! And you'd grown your team by a couple of folks, and the presentation for
8.
Yeah, and the presentation for each game is just lifting with each one. And now I asked before about your experience with writing and narrative, because you just waltzed in there and just like started making these incredibly engaging games that are moving people just, in ways that we just aren't seeing in so many other parts of our medium. But another way in which your games are so impressive is just like the level of presentation of them, and like the cinematic nature of it, and the polish where and you can see that clear progression through them as well. I mean, Hypersquare is like it's a 2D game with a square jumping over obstacles, right? But and then you go to something like Echoes of Starsong, and it's just absolutely stunning. Tell me about that progression and how as a studio that came about.
I think Brian and I has always been interested in narrative games, narrative experiences. He's more interested in literature and also movies as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then we both played a lot of narrative games, and like narrative in a sense of it can be really abstract, because like one of my most favorite game is Shadow of the Colossus. It doesn't really have like a narrative inside, but the environment and whole atmosphere, and also your goal of killing the colossal figure is so focused that you kind of you kind of feel like a deep narrative just by looking at the visuals, hearing the sounds, and also completing your objective. So I think we're both really sensitive about creating a meaningful story, and also like good cinematic experience not by just words. We also like really focuses on the sound of it and also the visuals of it, and combining everything together. So especially sound, we think sound is an element that been overlooked by a lot of people. People like they're like when like a game creator create a game, usually sound is last. So but we think sound is something that's universal. Like if we have a team of designers, art designers together, it's kind of hard to like put everybody on the same page. But with sound, if we play a music, people are much easier to relate to a piece of music. They kind of know their emotion and kind of know the motives of the piece of music. So we start creating our whole game usually based on like a central music piece, because we think that kind of put everybody on the same page and have like the same goal. So I think our development process is like that, basically.
That's it. That's incredible. So when you come up with I'll ask that question. Are you coming up with that music piece first? Like, are you working with your composer? Are they on the team, or is it like it's
Yeah,
Trio Dust, right? That's
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we have them on the team. He was actually outsourced for the first game, but during Rocket Whispers, we just asked him to join, and because we think sound and music is such an integral part of the whole experience. So in the beginning, he kind of like take musics online and he composed like a central piece of it, and then like the people from other departments, so the art team listens to the music, and then based on this music, they kind of find the visuals of like the visual reference of the game, and for the story, for the story writing, we like listen to the music, and then from the music, we kind of like spouts ideas of what the story can be, and then we make these together, and then put everything together with that.
That's incredible. It's actually one of the first studios. I work in a very similar fashion, not like as the studio. I mean, like, we don't do that at League of Geeks. It's a studio process, but just myself, like I'm a lot of my inspiration, that type of inspiration that like gets you up off your seat, or, sets your brain on fire with ideas for things, or, how something's coming together, or like you're saying, seeing the visuals of a game in your head, the experience, mapping it out, seeing the game in your mind. There's nothing like music that does that for me as well. Like I remember when we were on Armello, I had a playlist that I would just like go through all the time that was essentially like the game for me, and helped me, and my part of that, because obviously there's a whole team behind that game, but my part of that was just guided it with so much of the writing and everything. But I've never heard of a studio that actually does that. It starts with a music piece and sends it out, and it's like, hey, here's the seed. It's incredible.
Yep.
Amazing. And so, all right. So Rocket of Whispers, something else that's quite impressive about Rocket of Whispers is tell us about the Famitsu score that you got, because that's pretty wild. The first Taiwanese title ever in history, right, to enter their Platinum Hall of Fame.
Yeah. So we're really like shocked about it, because
I bet.
Like out of the blue, like one day we received, of course we submitted our game to Famitsu, and then it's like one day we received an email saying that because like in Chinese character, platinum and silver are kind of similar. Like they all started with the same character. And then so when they send an email, we're like, what, platinum? Or like, it must be wrong. It must be like silver. they must have mistyped it or something. And then not until like we actually bought the magazine ourselves, and then we look at it. And we're like, okay, that's amazing. Like,
wow.
That's definitely like some feat that we achieved. Yeah.
So I think this is really a great segue, because talking about the Taiwanese, it being the first Taiwanese title to enter the Platinum Hall of Fame, tell me a little bit. I'm really interested to hear, as you were saying, when you were a kid in school, not many kids around you were playing games, right? It's what with Taiwan today, with games being as huge as they are, and as accessible as they are now to folks, and especially game development. How is Sigono positioned in the local industry? And like, tell me, how are you feeling about Taiwan and even like Taipei and other parts of Taiwan's independent developers and scene? What's the scene like over there?
I think it's quite nice now, like because we in Taiwan we hosted our own like big game show, which is called Taipei Game Show, which is, I think it's around the corner. It's like February 2nd or something for this
it's
year.
like really soon. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So like there in that show, we have like an indie game area that's dedicated to like indie developers around the world. So like maybe like a few years about, like maybe like 5 years ago, the scene was not as big. So there's like 20 to 30 like little booths that showcase their games. But till now, like it's grown to like almost 100 booths of people showing. So like the indie scene is definitely growing bigger and bigger, and we have people in the industry trying to push these local indie developed games into the scene. So we have we have like our own like IGDA. I'm not sure.
Like you have an IGDA chapter there.
Yeah, we have an IGDA chapter there,
and they have like meetups and things.
Exactly. So they meet up every month and then do like sharings and stuff. And also they hosted another convention called TGDF, and it's also geared towards like independent developers in Taiwan. So I think the scene is pretty healthy right now. Like there's a lot of new people coming in and they're making like really creative games. But like I think one of the biggest bottleneck was because is like exposure. So in Taiwan, most people in Taiwan aren't that fluent in English. So it's really hard for them to push their game outside of like the confines of like Asia country.
Yeah. Is there much, actually totally ignorant to this, is there much Japanese literacy? Like, having received a lot of Japanese media and everything? Right. Okay. So is there much interaction between those industries like yours? Because I know there's obviously big indie scene in Japan and obviously huge AAA scene and stuff in Japan. Is there much interaction between the Taiwanese and Japanese game industries at all?
I think there's definitely more similarities with the Japanese game industry compared to the US. But I mean, like the gaming culture in Japan is like completely different compared
than anywhere in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So even if we lived under like the Japanese gaming culture, like we all grew up by playing like Japanese games. It's still really hard for us to push our games into the Japanese market, actually.
Yeah.
So,
is there like, that's an interesting question. Was there any concern for you, or was it even something that you even thought of? It might not have even been a concern at all. Like being a developer that's grown up in Taiwan, playing a lot of Japanese games, and Taiwanese titles as well, and then you're making a game and releasing it into Western markets that's a narrative-based game. Was there any concern for you that it might not, obviously it did, strike a chord culturally and, had this cross-cultural resonance with folks, but was that ever anything that you were thinking about along the way or ever a concern? I know when we made Armello, I remember there's a moment when I said, we can't do anything where it prevents this from being cross-cultural. It needs to, it's not going to be a Harry Potter, but it needs to be able to do that, Were you having those conversations as well?
Yeah, I think even from our first game, we were really conscious about being able to sell the game to basically anywhere, any place apart in the world. So we kind of picked the theme. Like a lot of people kind of focuses on like their own culture and then their own theme of the games. We kind of want to make it more universal. That's why we like created like another world, not on Earth, because we think that the culture, we can kind of like shape the culture on our own, and we can like draw different like inspirations and culture influences from like all parts of the world combined together. So yeah, we were definitely really conscious about it from the beginning. And then I think like on our third game, Echo of Starson, we kind of came back. We kind of want to like talk about our Asian roots. We talked about feng shui, like the theory of feng shui in space, but we still want to focus on the accessibility of the game, story-wise and culture-wise. Yeah.
It's amazing. And it really has, when you dive into these Opus games, it has that, as an absolute, just a straight up Westerner, like a white guy from Melbourne, Australia, like it resonated with me, like I was immediately grabbed by, but there is, you can tell by the ways in which you've embedded parts of your own experiences and, like you say, culture and everything into it. It kind of is familiar but new and different and unique in a sort of genre and like sci-fi fantasy, which is quite crowded as well. You've managed to carve out this really special own little universe for yourself that feels quite unique. All right, so
we didn't really shove like the whole culture stuff like onto to their face. We kind of just let them discover, and if they're interested, they can like Google online,
pull at that thread. Yeah,
exactly.
You put the pill in the peanut butter, so to speak.
Oh yeah.
So you've released. You've now got 2 Opus games under your belt. Your team's growing inside. Oh no, sorry. I mean, at this point in our sort of little story, right? Yeah. And they're growing in size, they're growing in scope and quality. You've got 2 human characters, not just an AI, things like that. And now you're stepping on to a 3rd game, which is Echo of Star Song, which is even bigger again. I mean, it's like a 12, 13-hour game. You've got multiple human characters and all it, NPCs and everything. And there is you've taken multiple aspects of your last 2 games and recursive gameplay mechanics, implemented new ones as well. The presentation is just kicked up another notch all over again. You can really see the evolution of the studio. Talk us through, and I know as well you partnered with the wonderful Kowloon Knights as well on this one. So talk me through that sort of that path post Rocket of Whispers to Echo of Star Song and how it came about, and again that the inspiration, bringing it together, your decisions around. I just want to hear more very clever Brian and Scott Sigono scoping decisions as well.
So after Rocket of Star Song, we of course we want to make a bigger game and we kind of want to improve on it. And one of the big like issues of Rocket of Whisper is like the aspect. It was played entirely from like a top-down bird's eye view, and so like people when I think it was like a great idea for exploration, but when people play Rocket of Whispers, they see like the top of their character's head for like 90% of the whole game.
Right.
And then when you like put the screenshot to the media, it doesn't really look good because it's basically like a dot in the middle and with like really like abstract rooftops of some buildings. That's it. So it's really hard. It's not really selling the game.
Yeah,
exactly. So like for our 3rd game, we're like, okay, we're going back, or we're going to make something that's more like people when they look at the screen, they can clearly tell who the character is and what they're doing. So at that time we decided to do like a 2D side-scrolling kind of game because like making the game entirely 3-dimensional, we think might be a little bit out of scope. So that's where the scoping process kicks in. So we kind of want to limit ourselves into a 2D side scroller kind of thing.
Yeah, and so just for our listeners as well, like the game is in regards to the actual scenes that the game's taking place in, they're fully 3D. It's stunning, like your art, so when Scott says 2D, he's more so talking about the camera, that 2.5D style camera with a absolutely fantastic, like beautiful cinematic camera moves and very, very like impressive level design. But you are in a 3D environment that you're seeing.
We create a game in 3D.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And okay, and so what else was it? So you knew that you wanted to do 3D. You knew that you wanted it to really like resonate. That you could not just for screens that sell the game, but you can see what's going on in them and everything, that it's engaging in that way. Tell us about the story and how these star songs and the mechanics around star songs and everything came together.
So for our 3rd game, we kind of want to put in a little bit of culture aspect in it, especially like the Chinese culture. So we looked at feng shui. Feng shui, it's basically how should I explain it? So basically, like when people in Taiwan or in the Asian part of the country, they buy like a house. There's like a lot of people who look at feng shui, which is like the positioning and also the orientation of where the windows is facing, because with feng shui, there's always like an energy source of some sorts from sparkling from one kind of direction. So like for when you look at houses, you usually want to find like windows that's facing the energy source that comes in. So we use this energy source idea as star songs in our Echo of Star Songs, because so the energy source are being packaged as like planets, and people like kind of go to the planet and harvest energy from it. And so we basically trying to make like a space opera with feng shui. So it's like combining Eastern and Western
what a pitch.
beliefs
That's amazing.
in it. So yeah, so it's like, okay, like the Western, like people from the States, they have their own Star Wars and Star Trek franchise. We're going to have our own Opus franchise that's based around feng shui. Because like space, like kind of story or like IP isn't really that common in Taiwan, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So people aren't really that fired up with like Star Trek or like Star Wars.
Yeah.
So
until they get a hold of one of your games, and then they're like,
hopefully.
"Let's go." Yeah.
That's
astronomy.
what we hope for.
Fantastic. So, and like, I mean, it's also a much longer game. And as I mentioned, tell us how Kowloon came into the picture as well. You know, I also, full disclosure, we at League of Geeks have the pleasure of working with Kowloon on our 2 new titles as well, and they're just fantastic. So Kowloon Knights is a games fund. Essentially, they're not a publisher or anything like that. They're just, they're kind of like a video game developer bank for good guy video game developer bank. They're awesome. They're such a talented team, and they've just funded so many fantastic projects. They give you some cash, and they sort of let you do your thing. So how did you meet Alexi and the crew?
Actually, they started visiting us during our like the day we found our days. Like we've been to conventions with our games, and they come to our booth and talk with us, saying they really liked us. But at that time, we weren't really thinking about like game funding, because we kind of kept the scope really, really small, and then we basically can be self-funded at that time. But for Echo of Starsong, of course, as you mentioned, we became more ambitious. We want to make like an 8-hour-long game with multiple characters in 3D environments. So we grew our team much bigger. So
what did you grow? So you were 8 on Rocket of Whispers. How big did the team end up going to on Star?
16 to 20.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so
it's
double
basically
in size.
Double the price. Yeah, double the length of the game and double the size of the team. So of course we have a lot of concerns on the financial side of things. So we know like a couple good peoples from the game industries who are willing to help funding the game, and so we're really looking at investors who are willing to fund, and they don't have too much creative input like that'll affect the entirety of the direction of the game too much. And also have like good connections with the publisher side of things. So that's how we found. That's how we like contacted Kowloon and talked about like the whole funding, and they really helped us with the fund. And then they also helped us contacting like publisher. I mean, like different platforms. So Xbox Game Pass. And also Nintendo and PlayStation, like they help us do some connections on it.
Yeah, I mean, money for development is always good, but definitely one of Kowloon Knight's strengths is like their connections and their relationships that they have with it. And obviously, Kowloon now has Kepler, the publisher, and everything as well, doing publishing stuff. It's really it's a good deal, and I can imagine as well. this third game too, you've got the two before you. They're critically, you've blown them out. They play. I mean, I played Echo of Starsong on Xbox. It plays beautifully. It's a really great experience. I think it's on Game Pass now. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, it's on Game Pass.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, check it out. All right. Now, there's something else interesting that's happened in the past few days, right? Like within the last couple of weeks, am I right in saying you released a little teaser?
Oh, yeah. So we
tell
just
me what's on the
announced our
horizon
new
for
game.
Sigono.
So, we just released our new teaser of our fourth game, Opus Prison Peak. So, as a lot of our fans might see, it's quite a different approach to the Opus series. Like it's like in the teaser, it was like full 3D and like the it's much more cinematic compared to before. So and it's about photography. Like in the teaser, there's like a camera inside, so it's about photography, of course.
Amazing. And like I'm super excited to see it all come together. So are you obviously you've just released a teaser, so I imagine you're not releasing much information about the game or anything like that. But what does this game mean for the team? Like, are you increasing your size? Are you sort of comfortable where you are? Like, talk to me a little bit about Sigono today and your sort of plans for the studio for the future and how you're feeling.
So we're still a team of 20. We think like this is like a really comfortable number.
Yeah, it's a good size, isn't it?
A comfortable size of the team. So we kind of maintain it as 20 people. But because with the past developing experience of Echo of Starsong, so we're a little bit more confident of creating a 3D environment for a game. So this game will be played in entirely 3D. Yeah, so cool. You can rotate the camera and stuff. So scoping wise, I think it'll be around the same as Echo of Starsong, if not smaller. We want to make a more concise experience this time, but
because you're like I said before, you're one of the only sensible game developers, it seems, when it comes to scope. You make the smart decisions where the rest of us are making silly ones. Amazing. Well, hey, Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. I mean, it's so impressive what you and your team have built here. You know, like, I mean, you only just need to go onto the Opus Echo of Starsong Steam page to see all the bundles and the different games and the soundtracks and everything. It's incredible. And I mean, even for Echo of Starsong, you released actually, before we sort of wrap this up, tell me about how the Japanese dub came about and like full bloom edition of Echo of Starsong.
So we always wanted to do like during the development phase of Echo of Starsong, we hit like a point where we cannot really convey emotions through text and also like the hand gestures of the figures. And we think like there's like a really effective way to convey feeling, which is to put dub inside. And then we tried it out a little bit and we're like, okay, this is really going to work, but we should release our game first before we do this feat. So like after we released the game, like during the release phase of the game, we kind of like looked into how to implement the dubbing inside our game. And because the reason we picked Japanese, of course we picked Chinese as well. But the reason we put Japanese inside is because people from Taiwan, we grew up by playing Japanese games. So we're really used to also watching anime. It was like all Japanese. we don't have Chinese dubbing most of the time. Yeah. So people are really used to like Japanese voiceovers. So, and then I think personally, we really wanted to try working with like a Japanese recording studio. So that's why there's two languages for the voiceovers.
It's incredible. Yeah, I played it in Japanese. It just says it really, really does add something to the whole experience. It's incredible. Reminds me of my time playing Ghost of Tsushima with the Japanese dub as well. So
hell
of a time. Yeah, it's really cool. All right. Well, hey, Scott, like I said, it's absolutely incredible what your team have done. I mean, I've only just I got to admit, like I missed the Opus series, like when the first couple games came out, but since jumping into Echo of Starsong, like I love it. You got me excited with this teaser for Prison Peak. Like, I mean, we knew we were going to chat from a few weeks ago, from earlier last year. End of last year, sorry. And then since then, you've announced this teaser. I'm kind of hyped for the next game as well. So consider me a fan as well, along with Kowloon Knights and your future astronomer too, and everyone else. Thanks so much for joining.
A marketing plug.
Go.
The
please.
Steam page. The Steam page of Prison Peak is out, so you guys can
wishlist now.
Us. Yep.
Awesome. Yes, please go wishlist now. We all know how important wishlists are for everyone. And yeah, Full Bloom Edition Opus Echo of Starsong is obviously on Steam, but it's available on Game Pass too. It's a fantastic experience, as are the first two games, and it's still there to share. And you can check. Here's the amazing thing about the Opus series is they're standalone experiences, so you can play them in any order, really, right? Like, yeah. All right, great. Well, hey, thanks, Scott. So great having you. Say thanks to Brian as well, and the rest of the team. Love all your work.
Yeah, really love chatting with you, Trent. It was awesome.
Yeah, awesome, man. All right, well, next, one of the biggest culinary renaissance I've ever had personally was spending a week in Taipei. So I'm gonna let you know next time I'm in town, and we'll hit the night markets.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.